There's a drought going on in California that we're hearing a lot about, and they're saying that, I've heard that animal agriculture is a big source of water. Why would that be? It doesn't seem like an animal drinks that much water. Why would that be such a huge, how big a source of it is, and why would that be a big source?
Well,
By the way, we all come from California.
yeah,
so
we're all kind of
we're all doing water rationing, taking shorter showers and not watering our lawns.
Yeah, that's one of the things that's so frustrating, I guess. You know, that household use of water in California is 4%. You know, households use 4% of the water. 96% is by industry and agriculture, and a good 50% is animal agriculture. Yeah, maybe even more. Yeah. So how the heck does it work out that it takes so much water to, say, get some meat on the table or get some dairy product to the table? And basically, it's in the irrigation of these cows are eating machines. They eat huge amounts of food. And as I said this morning, it works out to about 1,000 gallons of water for 1 gallon of milk. We're talking about 2,500 to 5,000 gallons of water for 1 pound of meat and of beef. And so it's really interesting. I mean, it just takes enormous amounts of water. There's actually, you know, when we lived in an RV, we traveled, as I said, all over the place, and we could really see. I explored the aquifer that comes off the Colorado River. The Colorado River does not reach the Sea of Cortez anymore. I mean, it just never reaches the ocean anymore. And a lot of the water, back in I think 1922, there was an agreement between California, Arizona, and Nevada that once the Colorado River leaves Colorado, California gets 80% of that water. And so I saw the aquifer that goes through Coachella and around there, and I actually swam in that thing a few times. But anyway, there's a huge amount of water, and it's going right down into Southern California from the Rocky Mountains. It's completely diverted, and over half of that water goes to feed these cows in these gigantic feedlots, the most ugly, hideous places you could ever imagine, just full of the most ugly, violent use of animals and the land, and this precious water resources, millions of gallons of water that could feed, if we would just use it for grains and vegetables for people directly, we could feed everyone. You know, I mean, the amount of water that we are wasting is outrageous. And then to turn around and tell people you can't water your gardens, or you know, while we're wasting this kind of water, because I mean, it takes a lot of water for irrigation. That's the main thing. But then it takes a huge amount of water, for example, just to wash down all of the equipment and dairies and slaughterhouses, and the animals drink actually a lot of water. A cow will drink like 30 gallons of water a day, just drinking. And so all the way along, it's an amount of water that's being used that most people could never conceive that it could be so much. And so it's very convenient to blame, say, the almond industry or one of these other, or blame homeowners. And I think the reason, how many of you have seen Cowspiracy? Some of you maybe have seen Cowspiracy, but there's very interesting interviews with the California State Department, the Water Department, and some of the other organizations involved, and how they say, well, you just don't talk about this. You're not supposed to talk about this because there are powerful forces that do not want you to talk about this. So I'm glad we're able to talk about this here. And I really encourage everyone to do a little research on this, because it's very important to understand that, you know, water is becoming more important than oil. I mean, water is really becoming a very precious, limited commodity. And animal agriculture is not only polluting water, but it's also destabilizing our supply of water, and we're losing fresh water supplies because of animal agriculture, just hand over fist.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so just a little bit more, and Will definitely covered it well. You know, it's true, all the water is going to irrigation. That's what, you know, Western agricultural irrigation accounts for 85% of our freshwater use country, you know, nationwide. So that's where the majority of our water is going, and the majority of that is animal agriculture. So that's where the water is going. And So to produce 1 kilogram of animal protein requires 100 times more water than to produce 1 kilogram of grain protein. You can look at it this way: 16 pounds of grain is the same amount of water equals 1 pound of meat. And I mean, you think about that, 16 pounds of grain, that's a lot of food. I mean, that could feed a family of 4 for a week or more. 1 pound of meat, that's maybe 1 meal for that family of 4. So much water being wasted on animal agriculture. Watering the livestock, washing the factory and equipment. I mean, there's so much water used in this industry. The dairy floors have to be washed down of all the excrement. All the slaughtering equipment has to be washed off. There's just so much excessive water use. There's these new automated flushing systems that are kind of a new innovation in the dairy industry, where they automatically flush the entire floor out. And these systems can use up to 150 gallons of water per cow per day. It's a huge waste of water. The Stockholm International Water Institute had a study recently, and they issued a dire warning. They said with the population, expected to reach 9 billion by 2050, there would not be enough water to irrigate food to feed everyone on the planet with our current dietary choices. There's not going to be enough water. We've got to start changing. What was their proposed, solution for this? A vegetarian diet. They felt that, they really warned of catastrophic water and food shortages if action was not taken swiftly to reduce meat consumption worldwide. So this is a crisis. And I also really want to mention about chickens. Oftentimes we hear cows, we think of cows as being the ecological culprits. We always think, oh, it's the cows that are spewing the methane, and it's the cows that are doing the water use. And chicken's a little better, right? Chicken's a little more ecological. Well, not necessarily, and especially when it comes to water use. Comparing animal agriculture with vegetable production, dairy uses 3 times more water than growing the equivalent vegetable food, that plant-based food. Eggs take 10 times more water than plant foods, and chicken meat takes 14 times more water than vegetable foods. So it can be even worse with chickens and eggs than cows or dairy. So it's all impactful. And I'll end, well, there's some good stats here. I'll try and get through them. The amount of water it takes to produce a month's worth of food for meat, dairy, and egg eater, you can use the same amount of water and grow food for a vegan for a year. So that's how much water is saved. You can also look at it this way. 2,500 gallons of water can yield 100 pounds of potatoes. It's a lot of food. It's a lot of hash browns. 50 pounds of fruit and only 1 pound of meat. So incredible water savings by eating a plant-based diet. What's that? The stat I just did, 2,500 gallons of water can produce 100 pounds of vegetables, 50 pounds of fruit, or 1 pound of meat. You know what? It's all in my book. You should go buy my book. What's that? A year. So a year's worth of water for someone that's eating meat, dairy, and eggs. You can use the same amount of water and feed and grow food for a vegan for a month. Wait, did I get that backwards? I got it all backwards. I had it before. Let me read it again. Okay, the amount of water to produce a month's worth of food for someone that eats meat, dairy, and eggs. Sorry, I got the month in your. Can use the same amount of water to grow vegan food for a year. That's what it was. It's all in my book.
I'll add one other interesting tidbit. Lake Powell is the largest reservoir in the United States as measured by capacity. It's a big lake that was made by forming a dam on the Colorado River, and the lake is at the Utah-Arizona border. and it provides water to many western states, 10 states, including California. Because of multi-year drought in the West, not just California, but other states, Lake Powell is only at about 40% of its normal capacity. It's low by 5 trillion gallons. And just coincidentally, this is not a causal relationship, but just coincidentally, California is the nation's leading dairy producer, and it takes about 5 trillion gallons of water per year to produce the dairy that California produces. So that puts those two in perspective.